Here in East Texas with our two seasons, we can plant corn early with the rest of the vegetables, and then we can come in later. Now, the later crop, uh, they recommend planting in July. Now, this is the first crop. This is actually dent. It's a field corn, but it's maybe not quite as sweet as the sweet corns, but it has a whole lot more corn flavor. And this corn right now, if it wasn't due to too much water this year, should be up about the top of that hoe right there. It it produces good. We don't worry about the coons quite so much because normally the coons won't bother. Of course, we do have something to get rid of the coons down here. Put them in a little trap and get rid of them. But if the coon can't grab the ear of corn, it usually doesn't mess with it. It goes off. So if your corn's healthy, standing up strong, then you don't have to worry about it. But realize sometimes when you grow crops, you're going to have a problem. And when you're in an area that gets the rainfall we get normally, and you get a heavier rainfall, then you end up with a situation. And plus, this the soil here is more of a what we call sugar sand around here. It's getting better as far as the longer we garden with it, with the organic matter and stuff. But it's really deep, and it tends to leach out the nutrients in the water. So what we have over here is we have a sprinkler system that we have set up on automatic, just simple yard sprinkler, setting a tube where it can get the whole garden, and we use 3 of these so we can kind of set them to have water where we want it. But when you're needing water and you water your garden and then you have a heavy rain that comes the next day or so, you end up with certain problems from water. We just kind of deal with it and go on from there. Talked about being able to do 2 crops. That's like a major thing here in the south, or in our area especially, because even though it dries off and we have a sprinkler system on a well, so we have plenty of water, but corn is one of those that it likes to get a drink occasionally, but it doesn't do real bad if it is kind of dry. It does like a little moisture. But right now, this corn was planted about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago, and it's getting up to the size to where I thin it. You can see little corn pulled up. I thinned mine back to about 8 to 10 inches. Now my early corn, I didn't even bother thinning it, I just left it. But once it gets up this high, that's when I fertilize it. I don't fertilize it when I put it in the ground, because if you have grass or anything else, you're fertilizing it too before your seed comes up. And what I'll do with this, normally you wait till it's about a foot high to lay it by. And what we mean by lay it by is we'll take dirt, and I put fertilizer there. We'll fertilize it, and we'll pull this dirt up to this corn. And this serves 2 purposes. It makes it a little bit more stable, but also the roots will come out and it'll have a better grab in the soil. But I'll go down and I'll lay all this by. Then once it gets about a foot or so tall, I'll come back, and it's best if you use nitrogen. But with nitrogen fertilizer, it'll make that green come on, so the plant will really get its leaves and get tall, and then it'll start producing. This is the same corn that's down there. It's just a later crop, and it doesn't take a whole lot of corn plants to get a lot of corn if you take care of them. So, but you do need to have the rows. At least 3 rows is best, because corn, it does get pollinated a little bit by bees, but it usually pollinates by the wind. So if it needs to be close enough so whenever the wind blows, the pollen falls down on the cobs when they start to form, little silks on the cobs and fertilizes that, so you'll actually have an ear of corn. And we get plenty of wind, so that's not a problem. Okay, it's almost the end of June, 1st of July. This corn is up plenty tall for side dressing and laying it by. Now, we discussed whenever it was little and I laid it by it, which makes it really want to jump up. When we fertilize it this time, what we're going to use is a high nitrogen fertilizer. What I have here, I have ammonium sulfate, which is 21%. I like to use ammonium nitrate, which is 34%, but feed store didn't have that, and unless I was waiting to order it. The ammonium sulfate, realize it has sulfur in it, so if your pH is low, it's going to bring a little bit lower, so you need to adjust with some calcium chloride or lime to raise that pH back up, keep your plants healthy. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle this down the side of this row. And I'm going to make sure I don't fertilize any piece of grass and stuff that's there and lay it by and cover it up. I'll just pull these as I go. Now I have some peas that's coming up from an earlier crop. We won't worry about them. Peas actually fix nitrogen in the soil, so it'll actually help the corn to come on. But once we put a little bit down here, what we're going to do, when I say lay it by, we're just going to take and we're going to bury this nitrogen, but we're going to pull dirt up to this corn. We're just going to, it gives it a healthier root system. The nitrogen is underground, so it gets moisture and starts working. Realize that nitrogen, normally when you put it out, it's only good for 28 days. It'll start dissolving and won't do any good if it doesn't get rain. So when you do it this way, it actually gets the moisture and puts it under ground where the roots can get it. Now we'll do that, and I'll do the same thing on this side. We're just pulling dirt up to the bottom. Corn actually likes when it's laid by. Normally, if we were doing a commercial crop like we had in the past, we would go over with the tractor and fertilize them and lay it by. The last video, or the earlier part of this video, was about 2 weeks ago, and you can kind of get an idea of the progress. Now I'll finish doing this, and then we'll come back to it later, and then you can see it then. This is our second batch of corn. This was planted on June 5th, and right now it's July 18th, so you can see it's been about a month and a half. It's just now starting to tassel. When it starts to tassel, it starts setting its cobs on here, but also when it starts to tassel, it'll jump its height real quick. So make sure it's got available fertilizer, because this is when it's going to put forth a lot of energy making its cobs and such as that. Okay, this corn here, it's a couple weeks old. Now this was where my earlier corn was that didn't do real well. I've changed my row direction for one, which probably won't make a big difference. And normally I wouldn't plant another crop right on top of where I planted the one, but this was an available space. It was one that I knew I could get to it was kind of hard, because once I tilled this up, instead of getting all the old corn composted, I just went ahead and planted. So my rows would still look better once I start laying this corn by and fertilizing it. But this is the third crop of corn. Like I say, in the South we have a long season, so you can continue to plant things as you need them, instead of planting a whole bunch all at once. If like corn, you can freeze the cobs. They, blanch them, freeze them, and they're good. But the cob takes up a lot of space in the fridge. Normally, whenever we freeze corn, we'll cut the corn off the cob, and then we'll take and freeze the kernels and get rid of the cob. So realize, if you like corn on the cob, stagger it so your corn comes on at different intervals. But always, like I said in previous, make at least 3 rows. That way you can get the cross pollination from the ones, and then you'll have a good crop.